voltage drop can indeed be a concern for the described project. The initial thought of using 10-gauge wire for the exterior junction box and splicing to 12-gauge underground feeder cable is not the best approach from an electrical engineering perspective. To determine the actual voltage drop, the following formula is used: voltage drop equals current times distance times conductor resistance divided by 1000. Let's assume a 120 volts circuit with a load of 20 amps. For example, perhaps powering a power tool. Using the formula, voltage drop equals 20 amps times 80 feet times 0.105 ohms divided by 1000. This equals 1.68 volts. This voltage drop is acceptable since it is within the limit of 3 volts, but it is close to exceeding it. It is better to always design within a safety factor. To reduce voltage drop, it is better to use a larger gauge wire, such as 8 gauge, for the entire run from the load center to the sub-panel in the garage. This will ensure adequate voltage at the sub-panel in the garage and also account for future increases in load. Now, regarding the estimated man-hours, 22 hours is a reasonable estimate given the tasks that are involved. Firstly, digging the trench. This could take approximately 4 hours. Secondly, running and burying the new underground feeder cable. This will take about 8 hours. Thirdly, installing the junction boxes and splicing wires takes about 4 hours. Fourthly, connecting the sub-panel in the garage takes about 3 hours. Lastly, miscellaneous tasks may take up about 3 hours to complete. These tasks add up to approximately 22 hours, so the estimated time is sufficient. Here are some estimating tips to assist in more accurate future quotes. 1. Break down the job into smaller tasks and estimate the time needed for each task individually. 2. Always allow for unexpected delays and obstacles. 3. Consider the complexity of the work and the level of experience. 4. Get feedback from experienced electricians or contractors in order to refine the accuracy of the estimates. 5. Utilize software or online tools to assist with estimating. These can help to increase the accuracy and efficiency of the estimation process. Here are some additional details to consider. It is always a good idea to overestimate rather than underestimate, as unexpected obstacles can arise. This can protect from losing time and money on the project. Furthermore, it is important to ensure that all work complies with local electrical codes. It is especially important to comply with the National Electrical Code, or NEC. This includes the proper depth of burial for underground wiring, which is typically 24 inches. In addition, it is also important to use the correct type of underground feeder cable for the application and the proper size of conduit for protecting the cable where it emerges from the ground. When making the connections at the junction boxes in the sub-panel, make sure to use the correct connectors and terminals and ensure that all connections are tight and secure. It is also important to label all circuits clearly. This will help with future troubleshooting and maintenance. To further expand on obtaining more work, networking with local contractors, real estate agents, and homeowners will help increase word of mouth. Advertising services in local publications and online directories will also help reach a wider audience. Creating a strong online presence with a website and social media profiles helps to increase visibility and establish credibility. Offering competitive pricing and excellent customer service will help attract and retain customers. Specializing in a particular area of electrical work, such as smart home installations or electric vehicle charging, can help to differentiate from competitors. Offering maintenance contracts to existing customers provides a recurring revenue stream. When running the underground feeder cable, be sure to follow all manufacturers' instructions and recommendations. This includes the proper methods for splicing the cable and the correct type of sealant to use. It is also important to use caution when digging the trench, especially near existing underground utilities. Call before digging to locate any buried lines and avoid damage. When connecting the sub-panel, make sure to follow all safety precautions and disconnect the power before working on the panel. Use a multimeter to verify that the power is off. When working on electrical systems, it is important to always prioritize safety. Wear appropriate personal protective equipment such as safety glasses, gloves, and work boots. Use insulated tools and follow all lockout-tagout procedures. If there is any doubt about what is being done, it is best to consult with a qualified electrician. The goal is to provide safe and reliable electrical service to customers, and it is important to take all necessary precautions to ensure that the work is done correctly. When bidding on electrical projects, it is also important to consider the cost of materials. Get quotes from multiple suppliers to ensure that you are getting the best price. It is also important to factor in the cost of transportation and disposal of waste materials. The price of copper wire can fluctuate significantly, so it is important to stay up to date on current market prices. When preparing a quote, it is also important to clearly define the scope of work. This will help to avoid misunderstandings and disputes later on. Include a detailed list of all tasks that will be performed and the materials that will be used. It is also important to specify the payment terms and the timeline for completing the project. Getting a signed contract before starting any work will protect and ensure that all parties are in agreement. If any changes are made to the scope of work, it is important to document them in writing and get the customer's approval before proceeding. This will help to avoid any confusion or disagreements later on. When working on older homes, it is important to be aware of potential hazards such as asbestos and lead paint. Take appropriate precautions to protect yourself and your workers from these hazards. It is also important to be familiar with the local building codes and regulations. These codes can vary from city to city, so it is important to check with the local authorities before starting any work. Obtaining the necessary permits before starting any electrical work is very important. This will help to avoid any fines or penalties. Building relationships with local inspectors can make the process smoother. When hiring employees, it is important to conduct thorough background checks and verify their qualifications. It is also important to provide them with adequate training and supervision. Ensuring that they have the necessary skills and knowledge to perform their jobs safely and effectively helps protect the business and the employees. When it comes to marketing an electrical business, word of mouth is still one of the most effective forms of advertising. Encouraging satisfied customers to refer to their friends and family will help generate new business. Creating a referral program that rewards customers for referring new business is a great incentive. Participating in local community events can also help to raise awareness of the business. Sponsoring a local sports team or donating to a local charity will help to build goodwill and improve your reputation. When it comes to managing the finances of an electrical business, it is important to keep accurate records of all income and expenses. This will help to ensure that you are paying the correct amount of taxes and will also help to identify areas where you can save money. Consider using accounting software to help manage the finances. It is also important to have a good understanding of the cash flow. This will help to ensure that you have enough money to pay your bills and to invest in the business. When it comes to insurance, it is important to have adequate coverage to protect the business from potential losses. This includes liability insurance, property insurance, and workers' compensation insurance. Review the insurance policies regularly to ensure that they still meet the needs of the business. When it comes to legal matters, it is important to have a good relationship with an attorney who is familiar with the electrical industry. They can provide advice on contracts, liability, and other legal issues. It is also important to stay up to date on the latest laws and regulations that affect the electrical industry. When it comes to technology, it is important to embrace new tools and techniques that can help to improve efficiency and productivity. This includes using mobile devices, cloud-based software, and other technologies. Stay up to date on the latest trends in the electrical industry and adopt those that can help to improve the business. When it comes to customer service, it is important to always be responsive and professional. Return phone calls and emails promptly and address any concerns or complaints in a timely manner. Always treat customers with respect and courtesy. When it comes to safety, it is important to always put safety first. This means following all safety regulations and procedures and providing employees with adequate training and equipment. Always be aware of potential hazards and take steps to mitigate them. When it comes to quality, it is important to always strive for excellence. This means using high-quality materials and workmanship and ensuring that all work is done to code. Always inspect the work carefully to ensure that it meets the highest standards. When it comes to innovation, it is important to always be looking for new ways to improve the business. This means experimenting with new technologies, processes, and services. Always be willing to try new things and learn from your mistakes. By following these tips, you can increase the chances of success in the electrical business. It takes hard work, dedication, and a commitment to excellence, but the rewards can be great. Regarding the voltage drop calculation, it's also important to consider the temperature rating of the conductors. As the temperature of the conductor increases, its resistance also increases, which can lead to a higher voltage drop. The National Electrical Code, Section 310.15, provides ampacity correction factors for conductors operating at temperatures other than 30 degrees Celsius. Also, the type of insulation used in the conductor can also affect its ampacity. Some types of insulation are better able to withstand high temperatures than others. The NEC provides ampacity tables for different types of insulated conductors. When selecting a wire gauge for an electrical circuit, it is important to consider not only the voltage drop but also the ampacity of the wire. The ampacity is the maximum amount of current that a wire can safely carry without overheating. The NEC provides ampacity tables for different sizes and types of conductors. It is important to select a wire gauge that is large enough to carry the expected load current without exceeding its ampacity rating. In addition to voltage drop and ampacity, it is also important to consider the environment in which the wire will be installed. For example, if the wire will be exposed to moisture or chemicals, it is important to use a wire that is rated for wet locations or chemical resistance. The NEC provides information on the types of wires that are suitable for different environments. When installing underground wiring, it is important to follow all applicable codes and regulations. This includes using the correct type of conduit, burying the wire at the proper depth, and providing adequate protection from physical damage. The NEC provides detailed requirements for underground wiring installations. Regarding estimating man-hours, it is also important to consider the time required for travel to and from the job site. This can be a significant factor, especially if the job site is located far away from the office. It is also important to factor in the time required for obtaining permits and inspections. These can often take longer than expected. When preparing a quote, it is important to be as accurate as possible. This means taking the time to carefully assess the scope of work and to estimate the cost of all materials and labor. It is also important to factor in a contingency for unexpected problems or delays. A well-prepared quote will help to ensure that the job is profitable and that the customer is satisfied. Regarding the question about getting more jobs lined up, it is important to be proactive in marketing the business. This includes advertising in local publications, attending trade shows, and networking with other businesses. It is also important to have a strong online presence, including a website and social media profiles. A well-designed website will help to attract new customers and to showcase the business's expertise. When it comes to customer service, it is important to always be responsive and professional. This means returning phone calls promptly, answering questions thoroughly, and addressing any concerns or complaints in a timely manner. Good customer service will help to build trust and loyalty and will lead to repeat business. Regarding the voltage drop calculation, it's also essential to understand that the power factor of the load can influence the voltage drop. The formula used earlier assumes a purely resistive load. However, many electrical loads, especially those involving motors or inductive components, have a power factor less than 1. A lower power factor means that the current is not perfectly in phase with the voltage, which can increase the voltage drop. For more accurate calculations in such cases, a more complex formula that considers the power factor should be used. To improve the power factor correction capacitors can be installed. These capacitors help to offset the inductive reactance of the load, bringing the power factor closer to 1. This can reduce the voltage drop and improve the efficiency of the electrical system. The NEC provides guidelines for power factor correction in Article 480. When working with electrical systems, it's also crucial to understand the concept of impedance. Impedance is the total opposition to current flow in an AC circuit and includes resistance, inductive reactance, and capacitive reactance. A higher impedance will result in a greater voltage drop for a given current. Therefore, it's essential to minimize the impedance of the wiring by using conductors with low resistance and minimizing the length of the wiring. Also, consider the skin effect, which is the tendency of alternating current to flow more on the surface of a conductor than in the center. This effect becomes more pronounced at higher frequencies and can increase the effective resistance of the conductor. For high current applications, using larger conductors or conductors with a larger surface area can help to mitigate the skin effect. The NEC provides guidelines for conductor sizing based on ampacity and voltage drop considerations. When selecting electrical equipment, such as circuit breakers and disconnect switches, it's important to ensure that they are properly rated for the voltage, current, and interrupting capacity of the system. Circuit breakers should be sized to protect the wiring from overcurrents and short circuits. The interrupting capacity of a circuit breaker is the maximum amount of fault current that it can safely interrupt without being damaged. The NEC provides guidelines for selecting circuit breakers and other electrical equipment. When working with electrical systems, it's also important to be aware of the potential for arc flash. Arc flash is a dangerous electrical explosion that can occur when there is a short circuit or other fault in the system. Arc flash can cause serious burns, injuries, and even death. To protect against arc flash hazards, it's important to wear appropriate personal protective equipment, such as arc-rated clothing, gloves, and face shields. It's also important to follow safe work practices and to energize equipment whenever possible before working on it. The NEC provides guidelines for arc flash hazard assessments and mitigation. When designing and installing electrical systems, it's also important to consider the grounding and bonding requirements. Grounding is the process of connecting the electrical system to the earth, which helps to stabilize the voltage and to provide a path for fault current to flow back to the source. Bonding is the process of connecting all of the metal parts of the electrical system together, which helps to create a low impedance path for fault current. Proper grounding and bonding are essential for safety and for preventing electrical shock hazards. The NEC provides detailed requirements for grounding and bonding. When working with electrical systems, it's also important to be aware of the potential for electromagnetic interference, or EMI. EMI is unwanted electrical noise that can interfere with the operation of electronic equipment. EMI can be caused by a variety of sources, such as radio transmitters, power lines, and electrical equipment. To mitigate EMI, it's important to use shielded cables, filters, and other techniques to reduce the amount of noise that is coupled into the electrical system. The NEC provides guidelines for minimizing EMI in electrical installations.